Hi, I'm Rowena. At this year's family gathering, my sister raised her glass, smiled, and called me a pathetic failure right in front of everyone. And no one blinked. Not my mother, not my brother. But what they didn't know was that I owned the company they were all there to celebrate. How did I end up being erased from a legacy I helped save? And how long can a family pretend you don't exist before you remind them, legally and publicly, that you do? Stay with me. This story doesn't start with betrayal, it starts with silence. The text from my mother arrived on a Tuesday morning, casual, clipped, and entirely predictable. Dinner's at 6 this year. Don't be late, Rowena. No, how are you? No hope to see you, just logistics. As usual. For 8 consecutive Thanksgivings, I'd shown up. Not because I was wanted, because it was expected. The obligation clung to me like Arizona dust dry, invisible and inescapable. I knew exactly how the night would unfold. Red clay tiles, polished countertops no one was allowed to touch. Dinners dressed up like award shows. And me, the extra chair they always forgot to count until I walked through the door. I pulled into the driveway 15 minutes early, parked behind Callista's pristine Lexus, and stared at the front door. I could already feel the stiffness in my shoulders setting in. Another performance was about to begin. The door swung open before I knocked. My mother, Irene, wore her trademark holiday smile tight-lipped and surgically polite. "Oh, good. You brought wine," she said, taking the bottle without a glance. She didn't ask how I was. Inside, the same tension-filled warmth hovered in the air. The kind of cheer where everyone smiles just a little too wide. I set the Pinot Noir on the counter like an offering to gods I no longer prayed to. Callista's voice floated in from the den, smooth and rehearsed. "Rowena's here? Well, there's a miracle," she called out, laughter trailing behind her words. "Still figuring life out, huh?" I walked into the kitchen to help with the appetizers, but I might as well have been a stranger. My mother was already delegating tasks to Callista, to Caroline, her golden daughter-in-law, but not me. Eventually, I picked up a tray of deviled eggs and carried them out, hoping someone would notice I still knew how to be useful. At dinner, I was seated at the far end of the table, same spot as every year, right between the sideboard and the wall, the kind of seat you give to a polite inconvenience. From there, I had a clear view of the show. Callista was in full form, her hair professionally blown out, makeup perfect, her voice just the right blend of modesty and self-promotion. "I've been invited to consult for a new startup in San Francisco," she said, slicing her turkey like it was a victory trophy. "After my last TEDx, they said I have a gift for translating brand purpose into market presence." Aunt Molly clapped. Uncle Raymond murmured something about legacy. And then someone, probably well-meaning, maybe a little tipsy, asked me, "And what have you been working on, Rowena?" I opened my mouth, but Callista beat me to it. "She's between things," she said with a laugh. "Not everyone's built to build, right?" Then she turned to me directly. "Some people just analyze from the sidelines. It's cute." The laughter that followed wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. My mother chuckled lightly, then looked down at her plate. No one defended me. No one said a word. My chest felt hollow, like all the air in the room had been sucked into that moment and left me behind. I took a sip of wine. It didn't help. The rest of the meal blurred. Conversations about stocks, vacation homes, influencer deals. I watched Callista pass out instructions for cleanup like a commander handing out orders. "Be a darling, Ro," she said, pushing a stack of wine glasses toward me. "Just like old times. Rinse these, will you?" I froze. Everyone laughed. Not maliciously, not overtly. Just the way people laugh when they've decided someone's harmless. I carried the glasses to the sink. Standing there, scrubbing crystal under 2 bright lights, I felt 15 again. Invisible, unchosen, useful only when convenient. I thought about the graduation ceremony where no one showed up. The startup pitch I was proud of that was met with blank stares. The job offers, the promotion, the nights spent finishing deals so big they saved companies. None of it mattered at that table. I was just the sister who brought the wine and washed the glassware. I wiped my hands, poured myself another glass, and returned to the dining room. Nobody looked up. As I sat back down, something shifted not in them, but in me. It wasn't rage, it wasn't sadness. It was something quieter, sharper. I smiled, not out of politeness, out of recognition. They had no idea who I really was. Not yet. The next morning arrived with too much sun. That kind of Arizona light that makes everything look sharper than it should. I sat at my small desk by the window, not touching the cold coffee I'd poured an hour earlier. The apartment was quiet, intentionally so. I'd muted every thread, turned off all alerts. I didn't need a replay of last night from anyone else. My own mind was doing a fine enough job. Callista's voice kept looping in my head, that bright, polished tone she used when she wanted to sting without leaving a bruise. Some people just analyze from the sidelines. It's cute. The chuckles around the table had faded quickly, but the silence afterward, that silence stayed with me. Nobody stood up for me, not even my mother. My phone lit up. One new voicemail. "Rowena!" Mom's voice started, clipped and vaguely scolding. "You always take things too personally. Your sister didn't mean it like that." I let the message play through, blinking at the screen, jaw tight. A second later, I called her back. I spoke evenly, choosing each word as if it might be counted against me. I told her it wasn't about being too sensitive. It was about being disrespected. Her sigh on the other end was louder than her words. "Rowena, come on! You've always been so competitive with Callista. I think you're just jealous." Jealous. That word landed with such dull familiarity, I didn't even flinch. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just ended the call. It wasn't anger I felt, it was fatigue. The kind you collect over years of being politely excluded. I turned back to my desk, trying to shift my mind, but instead found myself pulling out a stack of clippings from the drawer. I'd kept them, not for vanity, but as a reminder of what I had actually done. Headlines, reports. One particular article stood out. Under 40 and building big, Arizona's rising power players. My photo, my firm, my team. I remembered mailing a copy to my parents that Christmas, framed and wrapped. I'd placed it quietly under the tree. I found it weeks later, still wrapped, still sealed, pushed behind the sofa table like an unwanted relic. That memory got interrupted by another ping from my phone. A social media notification. Callista had posted. Big, bold letters. "Grateful for everyone behind this journey. Couldn't have done it without my team." I tapped to see the tags. Her PR director, her photographer, even her interior designer. Then my name flashed, and just as quickly, disappeared. The tag had been added, then removed. It wasn't an accident. I knew that. I also knew better than to ask. I set my phone face down and sat there, palms open on my lap, like someone waiting for news they already knew was bad. I wasn't hurt this time. I was done being surprised. I stood and walked to the filing cabinet tucked behind the sliding door in my living room. Unlocked it. Pulled out a manila folder labeled in Sharpie. Contingency. Inside, my documented equity stake. The valuation analysis I'd done at 3 a.m. 2 years ago when their numbers started falling apart. Contracts, board communications, time-stamped revisions, all clean, all airtight. Silas had helped me structure it quietly, legally. He never asked why. Now I finally knew the answer. They weren't just pretending I didn't contribute. They were rewriting history so I'd never been there. I closed the folder, placed it on my lap, and stared at the golden lines of sun crawling up the opposite wall. It wasn't revenge I wanted. It was correction. "They won't see it coming," I whispered to no one, "because they've never seen me at all." I stood, turned off my phone for the rest of the day, and poured a fresh cup of coffee. I stared at my reflection in the window, not sad. Not angry, just done pretending. The valuation sheet still sat open on my screen when I got up the next morning. The numbers, neat and solid, had comforted me the night before, cold. Clear facts that couldn't be spun into something else. I didn't touch the keyboard. I just sat there with my coffee, the air conditioner humming above me, and the city coming alive outside the window. Scottsdale always felt sharper after a confrontation. Maybe it was the way the light bounced off concrete, making shadows look more honest. Or maybe it was just that after every holiday gathering, I felt the same things, dripped down to the kind of silence people mistake for peace. I got dressed without thinking too hard, choosing a navy dress I'd worn to the last annual board review. My role in the company was discreet by design oversight and finance, but I had every right to walk into that building and ask questions. No one could argue that. Not yet. The elevator ride to the top floor of the company's flagship office felt longer than usual. The assistant at reception greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome back, Ms. Mercer. The audit package is already waiting in the conference room." "Thank you," I said. But my gaze landed on the hallway just beyond Huron, the wall of framed photographs. There, next to the large canvas of Callista on stage in Singapore, was a newer piece. A family shot, color-corrected and elegant. My father in the center, Callista on one side, a blurred background behind them. It took a second for the realization to land. That was our old photo, the one taken 5 years ago after the launch of our first retail location. I had been standing to my father's left in that original frame. Now, cropped, as if I'd never existed in it at all. The receptionist noticed me looking. "Oh, that piece was updated recently. New direction, clean branding." She smiled again, a little tighter. "It's all about story now, you know?" "Yes." I knew. I walked past without another word, a low hum pressing against my ribs, the kind of ache that only lives where dignity used to be. In the conference room, I went through the audit like I was checking off a grocery list. Nothing was wrong, nothing glaring. But the photo stayed with me, burning at the edge of my vision. Later that afternoon, I returned to my apartment and sat at my kitchen island, trying to write emails but watching the cursor blink instead. At some point, a delivery arrived. A small black box tied with ribbon. Inside, a minimalist leather notebook and a gold pen. A card read, "Happy birthday, Rowena." From the team. The handwriting belonged to Callista's assistant. The signature was hers. I stared at it for a long moment, then opened my expense tracking app. I searched Employee Wellness Program, found the line item, found the approval date, my signature, my protocol. I created this system 2 years ago, gift boxes for every staff birthday, funded by an internal initiative I had quietly set up and maintained. It was meant to build morale. Now it had looped back to me, unrecognizable, like a stranger returning my own coat and pretending it was theirs. "I built this," I whispered, voice flat. "And they still send it to me, like I should be grateful. I didn't throw the box away. I didn't keep it either." I set it down next to the audit folder, side by side with all the other documents no one thought I had the sense to save. Instead of reacting, I opened the locked drawer in my bedroom, pulled out the sealed file marked contingency, laid it across the desk, scanned each document with methodical focus, backed up everything to an encrypted drive, created a new folder, final prep. Not rage, not even grief, strategy. Later that evening, I sat with my phone in hand, looking at the cropped photo I'd taken earlier. I zoomed in slowly, focusing on the empty space beside my father. I knew that space. I'd occupied it in more ways than one. They had taken me out of the frame, but not out of the picture. "You erased me once," I said softly to the screen. "Let's see what happens when I show up in full resolution." The email arrived just before noon. Subject line, "Join us for the launch of a new legacy." It was glossy, templated, unmistakably corporate. My name was there, but not where it should have been, not under speakers, not under stakeholders, not even under advisors. Just guessed, Rowena Mercer. There was no call, no briefing, no acknowledgement of my position on the board, just a line at the bottom. Dress code, black tie, cocktails at 6. As if that was enough. I stared at it for a moment, then hit accept. I wasn't planning to make noise, but the silence was starting to itch. That Friday evening, I arrived at the rooftop of the Eastwell Hotel in downtown Phoenix. The setting sun glazed the skyline in copper, while soft jazz played under string lights. Waiters in black vests moved like choreography. Every corner buzzed with someone important. Press badges, investors. Familiar faces I hadn't seen since the original founding days, some of whom had only ever known me as Callista's younger sister. A hostess waved me toward a reserved table. I followed, heels tapping across imported stone. Just as I set down my clutch, a new arrival at the entrance stole the crowd's attention. Callista. Of course. Glowing in a satin ivory gown, makeup flawless, confidence radiating like it was custom-made. But it wasn't just her. She was walking in with Reed, my ex. He wore a tailored navy suit, hairstyled just the way I remembered when things were still good between us. He had his hand at the small of her back, guiding her like he'd done with me 100 times before. Callista beamed, raising a glass. Everyone, meet our new brand strategy consultant, Reed Mercer. No one flinched, except me. I didn't react. I didn't blink. I took a sip of champagne like I was tasting air. Reed didn't look my way, once not even when he took the mic 20 minutes later, and launched into a talk on narrative pivoting in legacy branding. He used lines I recognized, things I had told him during long talks on my couch, over takeout, when we thought we were building something that mattered. It's not just about message, he said. It's about who gets to write the story. And just like that, he'd taken mine. After the applause, I walked to the balcony for a moment alone. That's where I ran into Julia, a financial reporter I'd known for years. We chatted briefly surface talk, industry chatter, until she tilted her head and asked, "So, big move with Eastline Ventures, huh?" I frowned. "What move?" "You're kidding. They closed on 22% equity last week. 8-figure deal. It's everywhere." My stomach dropped. I pulled out my phone and searched. There it was, Callista's face front and center in the Business Herald, under a headline that read, "Bold and solo-driven, how one woman is reinventing power." No mention of oversight, no board quote, nothing. My name had been left out of the company's largest transaction since its founding. I walked back inside like I wasn't falling apart. Callista stood near the stage, sipping a martini, surrounded by a halo of admirers. I approached slowly. She turned, all smooth composure. "Enjoying yourself?" I smiled without meaning it. "You've made this a game," I said, voice calm. "I just want to remind you, I wrote the rules." She leaned in, unfazed. "Then rewrite them. Let's see if anyone's still reading." I didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. I walked away. Later that night, back home, I changed out of the dress with methodical care. I opened the fireproof safe in my closet and retrieved the second folder, the one marked Trigger Conditions. Inside, clauses, legal pre-approvals, internal communications, all quietly prepared in case Callista ever pushed too far. I'd hoped I wouldn't need them. Now I knew better. The email I sent that morning was worded with precision brief, composed, impossible to misinterpret. I'd copied the board, legal counsel, and the COO. No emotion, just facts. I asked for clarity around the Eastline stake sale, noting politely that I had not been briefed, consulted, or included. I ended with one line. Transparency is a shared value unless it isn't. I dressed like I wasn't attending a board update, but something closer to a deposition. Dark suit, no jewelry, hair back. My presence had always been quiet, but today I needed them to remember I existed in black and white in ink and capital. The boardroom was already half full when I arrived. Callista glanced up from her phone just long enough to register me with that flat, closed-lip smile she used when she wanted people to think she wasn't bothered. I sat without a word. 15 minutes in, during a presentation from HR about team restructuring, someone handed out the updated internal org chart. It was meant to be routine, just a refresher. Until I saw my name. Operational support, non-core advisory. I stared at it, then raised my hand. Can someone explain this categorization? The assistant froze. It's just a formatting simplification, nothing formal. I believe those titles were placeholder groupings. I looked directly at Callista. I wired $1.2 million into this company when the bank wouldn't return your calls. Are you saying I supported this business like a barista cart? She didn't blink. We had to simplify the chart. Titles get cluttered. Cluttered. I didn't respond. I folded the paper, slid it into my folder, and smiled slightly as I tucked it away. I didn't need to yell. The damage had already been done, and this time I wasn't cleaning it up for them. That evening, I drove to my mother's house alone. It was quiet, just her and the warm hum of the stovetop. She offered me tea like it was any other Wednesday. I took it, sat down, and asked her straight. Do you remember telling me, after Dad passed, that you'd transfer your shares to me when the time was right? She hesitated, stirred her cup. I don't recall making that kind of promise, honey. You said it clearly. We were standing in the garden. You said you wanted me to have some say in this family future. She gave me that smile, the kind that tries to smooth over cracks without filling them. Maybe you misheard. Or maybe that was just something I was considering at the time. You know how memory works. I nodded slowly. Yeah, convenient amnesia. Her face tightened, but she said nothing more. I didn't argue. I just stood, thanked her for the tea, and left. Back at my place, I opened my laptop, heart steady, breath even. I drafted a new email. Effective immediately, all oversight and participation from my end will proceed solely through legal counsel. I will not attend non-binding meetings. I will not approve informal decisions. I will no longer act as a silent partner, in name or in function. I copied everyone. At the bottom, I wrote, "Consider this a formal boundary." The next morning, I was locked out of the company's Slack channel. My email inbox pinged 5 times in 10 minutes press alerts. I clicked the first one. Company Pioneer steps back amid restructuring. I read the headline twice, then closed the screen. Fine, I said aloud to the quiet room. Then let's restructure everything. The invitation arrived in a sleek ivory envelope, sealed with gold foil and pretension. Thick cardstock, embossed edges. Every word screamed luxury, legacy, reinvention, but not mine. It was a gala launch for the new brand identity of the company I had helped build, from a trembling idea on a whiteboard to something people now toasted with champagne. I searched the print bold, italic, and fine. My name was nowhere. Not as a founder, not even as a contributor. I RSVP, yes, without a second thought. Not because I wanted to celebrate. That phase had ended months ago, maybe years. No, I said yes, because there's something even colder than being erased quietly. Watching it happen in front of you, dressed up as celebration. The ballroom gleamed with excess. Crystal chandeliers shimmered like upside-down constellations, throwing scattered halos onto branded photo walls. Every surface whispered money. Callista's face was everywhere: billboards, step and repeats, digital slideshows on loop. The caption read, "Rebuild with elegance. Scale with soul." My line. I stood near the back wall in a black silk suit. Not to blend in, to become a shadow by design. Silas joined me quietly, dressed like a ghost, at a wedding, subdued, observant. He didn't ask how I was. He knew. "Just watch," he said. As Callista emerged from the wings, a microphone in hand and a grin rehearsed within an inch of its life, she looked flawless, a sculpted figure of credibility. And yet all I could hear was the hollowness behind her words. "Tonight isn't about where we've been," she began, her voice rich and charismatic. "It's about where we're headed. Together." She thanked the PR firm, the branding consultants, her interior designer, even her yoga coach, but not the woman who once worked 70-hour weeks to keep this company from dissolving into debt. Then came the moment that snapped the air in half. And a special thanks, she smiled, to L. Ramsey, whose vision reshaped our strategic trajectory. Silas' jaw ticked. I could feel the heat rise in my chest. L. Ramsey? The junior consultant who barely knew the difference between positioning and brand pillars 6 months ago? She had copied my presentation, down to the margins. I had mentored her, cleaned up her decks, and walked her through client strategy step by step. She had once texted me, panicked 10 minutes before a client pitch. Now, Callista was crediting her with a breakthrough that belonged to me. The applause rang out. Cameras clicked. My face didn't flinch. But my fingers curled around my clutch until the leather strained. I left before dessert. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't need to. The next morning, I moved with purpose. Tea in one hand, laptop open before the steam settled. No rants, no social media posts. I wasn't looking to go viral. I was looking to go accurate. I pulled up my archive. Emails with timestamps, initial drafts, version histories, slide decks annotated in Read Me Red, strategy memos, one with L's. Thank you so much. I couldn't have done this without you signed at the bottom. I labeled a new folder, R1 Contribution Attribution. Then I opened a new email. Subject: Timeline Review. Urgent clarification requested. To Legal Advisory, Board Oversight, Dear Board Members, please find enclosed documentation reflecting contribution timelines, drafts, and strategic frameworks relevant to last quarter's rollout attributed publicly elsewhere. Happy to discuss in detail. Respectfully submitted in advance of the annual review. Warm regards, M. No caps lock, no dramatics, just gravity. That evening, I sat at my kitchen counter and updated my professional bio. I deleted the line that read, "To help build brands that matter." I typed instead, "To own what I create and protect it at all costs." I stared at those words, letting them sink in. They didn't feel angry. They felt earned. At exactly 7:46 p.m., my inbox pinged. From Executive Liaison Subject. Meeting confirmed. The board will convene Friday morning. Please submit all presentation materials 24 hours prior. I placed my mug down gently and exhaled. Not from anxiety, but clarity. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't bracing for impact, was stepping into one. Showtime, I whispered. And this time, I wouldn't be behind the curtain. I woke up to a vibration that wouldn't stop. The screen on my phone was a waterfall of messages, group chats, old colleagues, even a couple of passive-aggressive emails from distant board members who never spoke unless they smelled drama. Someone had sent me a link. Behind the glam. The bitter sister trying to tear it down. I didn't even need to open it to know. But I did. The layout was designed to look amateurish, like someone venting on a blog. But the language was calculated, precise. It referred to a shadow figure with outdated influence and a relative who never quite found her footing after failure. There were references to early company struggles, exact phrasing from family dinners no one outside that room should have known. It dripped with malice, wrapped in fake humility. They didn't use my name. They didn't have to. I checked the site's metadata, the back-end info. It was registered anonymously, of course. But the contact email? A placeholder connected to Gwen, Callista's head of PR. The same Gwen who used to forward me press drafts for approval before I was quietly pushed off those threads. This wasn't sloppy, it was timed. 3 days before I was scheduled to present to the board with legally binding records. I set my phone down, not gently. The mug of tea it made had gone cold. I didn't bother reheating it. Instead, I pulled up the R1 folder again, added a new section, External Interference. I uploaded screenshots, article archives, and IP trace logs. Everything needed to be time-stamped, clean, indisputable. 15 minutes later, Silas knocked on my door. He didn't need to ask if I'd seen it. He had that same look he'd worn the day we buried my father, grim. Composed, tired of being surprised. "I know," I said before he spoke. He pulled out his tablet and handed it over. On the screen, a full breakdown of contributions, contracts, version control history from our shared Dropbox. My pitch. Her voice. The overlap was surgical. We're past emotion, he said. This is about record now. We spent the rest of the morning finalizing the presentation tight, minimal, lined with timestamps and polite footnotes that left no room for excuses. By afternoon, it was uploaded to the board's internal portal, labeled Clarification, Strategic Attribution. The meeting took place the next day behind glass doors, under the drone of a ceiling vent and the cold watch of legal advisors. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't look to anyone for reassurance. I opened with a short video Callista's TEDx talk, the one where she said, "Vision isn't about seeing the future sits, about remembering who helped build it." Then I laid over the original pitch deck, slide by slide, the wording, the formatting, the timeline. I turned to face them. "You have 3 choices," I said. 1. Update records to acknowledge joint strategy ownership. 2. Adjust equity. 3. Arbitration. Callista wasn't there. Her legal rep sat in her place, arms crossed. "I'm not here for revenge," I added. "I'm here for correction." I closed the laptop. No one spoke for a full 30 seconds. And when they did, it was procedural. "Thank you for your time. We'll be in touch." I walked out into the hallway and felt the sunlight warm my shoulders through the windows. My breath shook, but not from nerves. From power. That night, just past 10 p.m., a new article went live. Whispers of a silent takeover? I didn't smile. I didn't flinch. I just turned my phone screen down and got back to work. The Desert Sky Convention Center glittered under November floodlights, as if the stars themselves had come down to watch. Outside, the desert air was brisk but dry. Inside, it was all glass and gold and curated perfection. I moved through the main corridor alone, unnoticed, just another shimmer in a sea of sequins and tailored suits. But not for long. Tonight was the company's annual gala. Once, it was a modest year-end affair. Now, thanks to Callista, it had bloomed into a full-blown spectacle tribute to a decade of visionary leadership. Her decade, her brand, her name on every banner, not a word about mine. I approached the 5th row, left side. My place card was printed in soft gold script. Guest +1. An afterthought, like I was someone's date, not someone who'd once co-authored the blueprint they were all drinking champagne over. I didn't bring anyone. Didn't need backup. What I carried tonight couldn't be held in a hand. Just as I sat down, my phone vibrated in my clutch. "Silas, you're ready." Let them talk first. The lights dimmed before I could text back. On screen, a slow-motion montage began to play Callista's most photogenic moments. Ribbon cuttings, charity auctions, tech talks. Her voice layered over the footage like gospel. She spoke about grit, growth, resilience. A chorus swelled under her narration, cueing polite awe. Then came the voiceover. One woman, one brand, one legacy. The applause was instant, practiced, paid for. She stepped on stage wearing a satin gown that shimmered like a lie. The crowd adored her. Investors, influencers, industry names, everyone who had a stake in pretending this empire was hers alone. She raised her glass. "To 10 years," she declared, smiling, "of fearlessness." I stood up. No spotlight followed. Just an uncertain rustle across the room as people craned their necks. I walked the center aisle slowly, my heels sharp against the marble floor, the hush growing louder with every step. Someone near the stage whispered my name. The MC flinched when I reached the steps, but Silas, already standing near the side curtain, gave him a tiny shake of the head. Daunt. No introduction, no preamble. I reached the podium, placed a single leather-bound folder down, opened it with care, as if the pages inside were sacred, which, in a way, they were. I looked out at them board members, stakeholders, people who once dismissed me as too quiet to lead. I cleared my throat once and spoke. 2 years ago, this company was 72 hours from default. The acquisition deal you're all familiar with? That wasn't magic. That was me. I refinanced the debt. I secured the contracts, and I acquired a controlling interest. I paused. I own 51% of this company. Silence collapsed over the room like a dropped curtain. In the back, a champagne flute shattered. Someone whispered a curse. Up front, a PR assistant gripped Callista's arm so tightly, her knuckles whitened. She didn't move. She didn't even blink. I stepped away from the mic. The contract complete, with notarization and legal seals, remained on the podium. I didn't wait for questions. There would be plenty tomorrow. Outside, the cold hit me in the best way. Real. Honest. Like something earned. I walked across the tiled plaza, alone, each step quieter than the last. With every click of my heels, I felt its hame peeling off, silence crumbling. The version of me they tried to reduce to a footnote was gone. I reached my car, slid into the seat and shut the door. For a moment, I just stared at the wheel. My hands rested on the leather, steady now. My reflection blinked back at me from the rearview mirror. Tired? Yes, but whole. I didn't win tonight, I said aloud, my voice even. I just took my name back. My phone buzzed again. Silas. Board wants to meet. They're calling you first thing. I nodded to no one. Started the engine. The dash glowed faintly, as if it too was waking up. Let's finish it. The morning light bled in slow through the sheer curtains, casting long golden stripes across the living room floor. It was the kind of sunlight that asked for nothing, offering no judgment, no noise, no urgency, just presence. For once, I welcomed the silence. There were no frantic calls, no new depositions waiting in red folders, no breaking news alerts pinging across my phone. Just one quiet email, its subject line blinking back at me like a soft exhale. Subject: Confirmation of executive authority pending board ratification. That was it. No exclamation marks, no dramatic headings. But it held more weight than any press release or public apology ever could. It meant I wasn't a footnote anymore. I hadn't just fought to be heard. I had made it impossible to be ignored. Not because I screamed, but because I stood long enough for the room to finally go quiet. The media didn't know what to do with that kind of ending. Most headlines called it a quiet restructuring, a strategic leadership transition. A few hinted at deeper shifts beneath the surface. None dared call it what it truly was, a reckoning in plain clothes. Callista released a statement later that afternoon. It was polished, vaguely introspective, and thoroughly impersonal, stepping away for personal clarity, she said. The words sounded like a retreat wrapped in dignity. I knew it for what it was. So did the board. And deep down, so did she. That evening, just as dusk began to soak the sky in lavender and navy, I heard a soft knock on my front door. I hadn't been expecting anyone, and yet I wasn't surprised. I opened the door to find Irene, my mother. Her hands were empty. No gifts, no olive branches. She looked older than I remembered. Not in years, but in softness, like the sharp lines had faded into shadows. She didn't ask if she could come in. She just stepped inside like she still owned a key, like the house hadn't changed just because the daughter had. We didn't speak of the contracts she once hid from me, or of Callista's glaring absence from the last board meeting, or the fact that, for the first time, my photo and full title now appeared on the company's website, no longer buried under the vague label Other Contributors. Instead, she walked to the bookshelf, where gaps had been left like missing teeth, and slid a small frame into its old home. It was a picture of me college graduation day, smiling in the heat, eyes squinting at a future I hadn't known would cost me so much. It was the photo she claimed had been lost in the move. I never believed her. I didn't believe her now either. But I also didn't ask. Some truths are so small, they don't need to be spoken, they just need to be returned quietly to where they belong. The next morning, I drove to the cemetery. The wind that met me was brisk, dry, and strangely soothing. It wove through rows of gravestones and plastic bouquets, tugging at the edges of my coat like a child needing attention. I walked slowly to my father's headstone, the folder in my hands more worn than before, creased and frayed from every meeting, every courtroom, every moment I'd used it to shield myself from forgetting what they did. I stood still, letting the silence wrap around me. I remembered that moment at the gala, just after my speech, the nod from him. Barely perceptible. A blink might be missed it. But I hadn't. He had seen me. Even then. Later that night, back home, I plugged an old hard drive into my laptop. It whirred to life like a ghost waking up. I sifted through folders buried under layers of time until I stumbled on the one I hadn't dared open. Voicemails, dozens of them, archived, unheard, forgotten. One stood out. I didn't know why. His voice came through, rough with age, words breaking around static and breath. If they don't thank you in time, don't wait. The truth has its own clock, and you're the reason this family still stands. I didn't cry because I was sad. It was something deeper than sadness, like surrender, like finally setting down a burden I'd carried so long, I forgot what it felt like to be light. When I returned to the present, I opened a new document and typed my final note to the board. I declined the CEO role, not because I wasn't ready, but because I didn't need it. I didn't want ceremony. I didn't crave spotlight. I accepted the title of Chair of Oversight instead, a quieter position, but one that carried real influence. Silent power was still power. In my journal that night, I wrote just one line: let them keep the spotlight. Ill hold the foundation. Around midnight, I walked the long way home, past the family estate. The windows glowed the soft yellow of memory. Through the front kitchen window, I saw Callista seated alone at the table, arms crossed, chin resting on her wrist, gazing at something I couldn't see. Maybe a letter, maybe nothing at all. Maybe she finally realized there were no more moves to play. I didn't stop. I didn't wave. I didn't pause for some final tearful hug or nostalgic farewell. I kept walking. Lighter, not whole, but no longer carrying their silence as my burden. Just mine. And that was enough. Sometimes what breaks us isn't a moment, it's the slow accumulation of being overlooked, of showing up and never being counted. But here's what I've learned. Silence, when chosen wisely, is not weakness. It's strategy. And owning your truth, even when no one applauds, is still victory. If you're someone who's been underestimated, ignored, or written out, don't spend your life asking for a seat. Build your own table. They may not clap for you, clap for yourself. You don't need everyone to believe in your worth, just you. And maybe one quiet nod from someone who knew all along. What about you? Have you ever felt erased in your own story? Have you ever had to stand up without backup and rewrite the ending yourself? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a 1 in the comments if this story touched something in you, or tell me where you're watching from. And if this wasn't your cup of tea, tell me why your voice matters here too. If this story made you pause, reflect, or feel just a little less alone, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next one. We've got more stories like this, stories that dig deep, peel back layers, and maybe help someone else feel seen. Thank you for listening. Your story matters too.